Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is Draft Night 2022. It is July the 7th. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
With you for the draft special show. That's really only probably going to be half draft coverage because so much happened this week and a half.
Turns out waiting a week and a half in the offseason brings you a ton of news.
Yeah, and it's been spread out too. Like, it's not like it all happened today.
No. I mean, today's obviously been a very busy day. We've got, 3 trades that happened today, 2 contracts that we're going to talk about, some other trades. Obviously, the draft is happening. But I need to know, Nick, with hockey off, what is it is there anything that's been filling your TV watching time in that hockey gap that you have there?
Yeah, there is. So I started watching season 3 of The Boys.
Well, I haven't started that one yet.
So have you seen any of the show at all?
Yes, I watched the first 2 seasons.
Okay. Season 3 picks up on a high note the way the other 2 seasons did. So I've only watched the 1 episode so far. But that is like as soon as we finish here, probably going to go watch The Boys. Okay,
so we should probably hurry this up.
Yeah.
It's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. Nick has to watch The Boys.
And the other thing I did watch and finish was Obi-Wan.
Oh, that's very good. So also no hockey content for you?
You know what I watched, Carl?
What did you watch, Nick?
It was more violent than Obi-Wan.
Really?
I watched.
Were any children hurt in it?
I watched. No. There was a big child who did a lot of hurting, though. The ESPN E60 Unrivaled documentary, 2 hours of Red Wings versus Avalanche content, like the good Red Wings versus Avalanche content.
Yeah. What was your review of it? Was it as good as the hype?
I loved it. I think it was as good as the hype. I will say, I think Red Wings fans will enjoy it more than Avalanche fans will.
That doesn't get me excited.
Like, the first half was very, very, very focused on the rivalry, where Colorado was. They were winning cups, the meetings with Detroit, fight night at the Joe. The next year they had another fight night. And then the second half was very much focused on Detroit winning their cups, the Konstantinov injury, accident, and then winning the cup in 98. That was my take on it.
And so did they just completely neglected the fact that Colorado also won Stanley Cups?
Yeah, like, they didn't go into anything beyond 1998.
Okay.
So we got coverage of 2 Detroit Stanley Cups and 1 Colorado Stanley Cup. And the 1 Colorado Stanley Cup was overshadowed by the whole, let's call it an incident between Claude Lemieux and Chris Draper.
We could call it an incident. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, it's a very political word for us to use on the show.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, I do know that because we had some issues with it in Canada, I do know it is going to be aired again on TSN tomorrow. So I think that's the first time it's going to be aired in Canada. So that'll be coming up. So once you're done watching the 6th round of the NHL draft, you can skip this. I give you full permission. Skip the 7th round, tune into TSN and watch Unrivaled. You can tune in there. So that'll be a good time.
Bless you if you can make it through all of day 2. If you can make it to the 6th round.
I don't tune in for any of day 2. I struggle to get through the entirety of the first round.
Yeah, I totally agree. After pick 10, it's normal. I've already kind of started drifting away from it.
There's a reason we pressed play on this podcast at pick 6 today? 7?
Yeah.
There's a big reason for that.
Decided to wait it out a little bit. What fun things did you watch that were hockey related, Carl?
I watched a parade. The most hockey related of things. I think every hockey fan loves a good parade. And it was such a fun. So the Stanley Cup parade for the Avalanche, it had been 21 years. And back then I went to school on the day that there was the parade. I did not have the opportunity to watch the parade live. And back then I highly doubt that it was even something I could have watched, right? I literally had to pull it up on YouTube and get like some stream from the news station in Denver to watch it. And I soaked it all up. It was so much fun. I know everyone talks about like, we're planning the parade. There's a reason we talk about planning the parade. It was just a great moment. It was obviously the broadcast was like 2.5, 3 hours long. I mean, they had all the players came out on fire trucks. They were told by the fire chief that they were not allowed to have beer on the fire trucks. Good news, Truly came in clutch and hooked everyone up with Trulies for the parade, not a beer. So they were fine there. And so it was just fun seeing the players celebrating, being able to kind of honor that team, and then the speeches. I mean, they started the speeches. They had like, I don't know, the governor, the mayor. Then we started with the team speeches and started strong. I don't think Jared Bednar got more than 5 words in before tears started coming.
Yeah, that's our second crying coach in like 2 weeks.
Right, for different reasons.
Very different reasons.
Yeah. And so I appreciated that. And then he turned it over to Gabe Landeskog, who within 5 words had his shirt off. That was surprising.
As you do.
As one does.
I'm surprised it took him 5 words.
If I was a professional athlete, I too would stand on a stage shirtless, but I'm not. And so I'm not standing on a stage and I'm not shirtless. But just, you could tell that they were having fun. They were celebrating, and just a great team effort. They supported each other. They had a good time. Mikko Rantanen forgot how to speak English in the middle of his speech, which is a good sign for him, I suppose. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I fully support anyone. If your team wins Stanley Cup, make sure to watch that parade. It is must watch, a big part of the celebration and being a part of it.
So a few standouts for me. One, like the great thing about these parades is all the pressure's off. Like these guys are just so loose. They're stripped down. They're loose. They're having fun. And that is fun to watch.
Well, and they've been celebrating for days at that point. So they're the loosest.
It looks like they haven't stopped. Like it seems like they're just still at their peak.
Exactly, for sure. I mean, that's because it's early in the morning. That's why they're not afternoon parades.
It's so true. They're just getting started for the day. I loved that there was a cop who tried to stop Bowen Byram from rejoining the parade because he thought he was just some fan with 2 Coors Lights in his hands trying to get to the team.
Yeah. Really, really, I mean, it speaks to the youth of the organization.
I mean, that cop did a great job. I would have done the same thing because I did not. I had one look at that guy. I was like, get out of here.
Right. Yeah.
And number 3, I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. Nazem Kadri, his T-shirts, Too Many Men.
The Too Many Men shirts was so, I mean, Naz's fashion that day shows up in a bucket hat and his own designed T-shirts. Fantastic. And if you too want to celebrate the Too Many Men penalties or lack thereof, I think they sold those shirts for charity. So you can and grab one of those. So
they did. Did you pick one up?
No, I'd already spent plenty trying to spend enough to get the free shipping on my Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup merch. So
nice.
Yeah. So that's a good thing that I've got coming there.
So the other thing that we should talk about, not related to the parade, but these guys are doing a number on the Stanley Cup.
So Nicholas Aube-Kubel drops it
for the team photo.
For the
5
team
minutes.
photo. Yeah. And then McDermott drops it.
Was that the one in the nightclub?
That's the one in the nightclub who you just slowly watched him fall back.
That was the best clip. It was like slow motion. You just saw him lose his center of gravity. And he went back. It's not
a light cup. I think that's the number one thing that people like. What stands out to you is like how heavy that thing actually is.
35 pounds.
Yeah.
And like, it's got to be different when you go to lift it up in front of you to over your head when you're wearing equipment versus not. Like, I imagine if you're fully in all of your equipment, you got to get some momentum and really lift it to go.
Right. That equipment's not designed for your hands over your head with weight. Yeah.
So when he did it without equipment, I assumed he was just like, with equipment, I need this much force to get it over my head. And then it was just too much. And he went all the way back. He broke its fall though with his face.
Did a great job saving the cup for sure. All right. Let's get to some of the news of the week. Do we want to just quickly touch on the Detroit Red Wings just made their pick in the draft? Pick number 8, Marco Kasper. And I think, actually, let's start here. What do you know about Marco Kasper?
Great name.
Solid name. First and last names are both strong.
Right? I feel like his nickname is going to be Ghost.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. And then I noticed the little flag beside his name, and I said Switzerland. And then I clicked on him, and I realized I was way off. Well, not way off, but he's from Austria.
He's from Austria. Switzerland is the plus sign.
Swiss. Oh, yeah, you're right. Same colors, though.
The Swiss flag is a big plus.
Yeah, I was way off. And that's about it. He's a centerman, which the team needs. They need a number one center. So, hopefully that's what he projects to be.
Well, so there's a number of things that kind of stand out to me about this draft. And I think more so than ever, and maybe this is just me, but let me know what you think. It feels like I know nothing about anyone in this draft. Do you feel the same way? Outside
of going into today, knowing that Shane Wright was a projected number 1 overall pick and has been for like 2 years, that's all I know.
Why do you think that is? Is it COVID? Like the lack of games, the lack of just tournaments? Like we haven't even had the World Juniors. Like that got canceled. Like is it just all of that we haven't seen these prospects, and so it's just scouts going out and doing this work? Is that what it is really?
I think that's a big part of it, right? Like junior hockey got hit real hard by COVID. Like they missed way more time than the pros did. So, when they're not playing, we're not watching when they are playing. But when they're not playing, then the scouts are not watching. We don't hear about it. So I think COVID had a lot to do with it. And then I think, the other side of it too is the last 2 years, the drafts were virtual, were they not? They were done like on Zoom.
I think they were done from Gary Bettman's kitchen table. Yeah.
Yeah. And people's basements and stuff. So I think that, they lost a lot of momentum with this event, but I think I think for Montreal to be the first city that it's held live in again was a smart move because of how passionate this fan base is, that they'd actually show up and cheer and boo Gary Bettman.
The announcement and the way that they handled, the trade announcement for Kirby Dach, it's fun watching a fan base have like, hey, your team just made 2 trades. Let's find out what they are. And they're like, well, you traded Alex Romanoff for 13th overall. And they're like, I think we like that. And then they're like, you got Kirby Dach, and everyone loses their mind. Like it's a fun way to go about it.
And also, like, come on, credit where credit's due. Gary, he played that moment up.
He knew.
He knew what he was doing. He built the moment up, and there was a good payoff. So good on Gary for announcing that trade the way he did.
Yeah. One thing that is standing out to me so far in this draft, I mean, Buffalo's just announced their pick. This player looks like every other player who's been announced. He's wearing a suit. He has shaggy dark hair. Don't know who it is. Oh, Matthew Savoy. There you go.
Oh, that's a name I recognize.
That's another name that I recognize. So that's pick number 9. only 3 of those players so far are Canadian, 2 players from the U.S. national program, and 4 Europeans. I think that speaks to the struggles of junior hockey, especially in Canada these last few years, is we aren't seeing that typical like backlog of and large amount of Canadian players where players in Europe were able to, play more through different ways, right? Men's tournaments, where a lot of these guys played, happened more than junior. So totally. I think that's something that's going to be a big factor here.
Well, and a lot of them will play like full seasons in pro leagues in their country with men, with former NHLers before their draft years, right? For a year or two almost.
Exactly. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So that makes a huge, huge difference. But this has been like if you're a Canadian, you could say it's been like a slow motion car crash over the last, 10 years. All of these countries have really picked it up and started to chase Canada on the international stage.
True. I think we still see in the later rounds, you see more Canadians and Americans getting picked in those later rounds just because of proximity and ease of scouting them, I think is going to be a big factor. But definitely. I mean, we had Slovakians picked 1-2, highest 2 players ever picked from that country. And they went first and second overall. Did you see the stat on who the previous highest drafted Slovak was?
Zdeno Chara, I would assume.
It was Marian Gaborik.
Oh, okay.
At 10. So that was the previous one. Now they've got first and second in the same draft, which is fun. And again, yeah. Well, and as was pointed out, like these guys both played together in the Olympics. Like these are players that are playing big level games, putting their talents out there and showing what they could do. So I think a big thing there. So with the draft, I mean, Shane Wright dropping to 4, Montreal taking a name that I will still, Juraj Slafkovsky. Does that sound correct?
The last name did. Nailed
it. Yeah, I agree. The first one.
Probably a little off, but I'm not going to try and guess at what it is either.
I think yes, Montreal
Uri,
needed...
Maybe?
Uri? Okay. Montreal needed centers, and they fixed that later. We alluded to that. But he looks like he's going to turn into a good scorer for Montreal. I mean, he's big. He's got a great shot, and I think he'll fit in with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it's the draft. You don't really know. Normally, 1, 2, 3 are pretty sure picks, but where his ceiling is, I don't know. He should fit in with what they're trying to do. And they've made some good moves, including getting the number 1 overall pick. Congratulations. But they made some good moves, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to elevate their team a little bit today.
Yeah, let's get to some of those moves that happened today, because there was lots, as we mentioned, lots of things happened today and this past week. So let's start with the Chicago Blackhawks, who made 2 very big moves today. The first move, trading Alex DeBrincat to the Ottawa Senators for the 7th overall pick this year, this year's second rounder, so 39th overall from Ottawa, and next year's 3rd. So that was what the haul was for DeBrincat. I'm surprised that it's only 3 picks and no roster players, no other prospects that went to Chicago in this.
Yeah. I mean, Alex DeBrincat, he went like in the 2nd round of his draft year, but this guy is like, let's look at the amount he's played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons in the NHL. He scored 28 goals, 41 goals, 18 goals in the shortened season, 32 goals and 41 goals. And that's on a non 2010 Chicago Blackhawks team. Like,
that is him being the leading scorer of the Chicago Blackhawks, which if you're the leading scorer of any team, you're doing a great job, but you're putting up multiple 40 goal seasons as a young player. This is fantastic get for Ottawa with what they gave up.
Totally. Now, I feel like Chicago is probably a little desperate because going into tonight, they had 0 picks in the first round. None, because they traded it away in the Seth Jones deal.
Well, and last year, right? They traded last year's first and this year's first for Seth Jones, and then subsequently fully collapsed and fell apart.
Yeah. So they were a little desperate, I think. They needed to get into the mix today in pretty high spots.
How much was Seth Jones on the phone as well, trying to get included in just any trade? Like, hey, you're trading Alex. Can you send me as well? I will waive any no movement clause, even to go to Ottawa.
You give away 2 firsts for me. You should be able to get 2 firsts back, right?
It's only what? I'm not a car. I don't appreciate that much.
It's only been 12 months.
Yeah. There's no refund policy. When does the warranty expire on this trade?
What do you
Send
mean
me back to Columbus.
What do you mean you overpaid?
No chance you did that. But so Chicago's 6th this year went to Columbus, and then they picked right after that 7th, making the pick in the Alex DeBrincat trade. Then a 3-way deal took place in which Montreal sent Alex Romanov, defenseman, off to the Islanders and got the 13th overall pick. So that move in and of itself, what do you think about Romanov for 13?
I think it's a bit of a high price for the Islanders. I think it's a high price for the Islanders.
I agree.
Like, is Romanov worth a first rounder? That's where my head keeps going. And the gut answer I keep getting back is no. Not yet, anyways.
Yeah, and especially in a situation, I mean, is he good? Yes. The Islanders, I mean, really the only thing that they have that's worth getting excited about is their defense. Like, they added strength to their strength.
Yeah.
And so on this team, like, where is he going to slide? I mean, they've got a great Noah Dobson sitting there, right? Now they've got Romanov sitting there. They've got 2 great young defensemen, which is something a team's going to need moving forward. But they've also got, Adam Pellick's a good defenseman. Ryan Pulak's a good defenseman. And so you're adding those. Now you've got a good top 4, but should you be paying that price for a guy who possibly will be sliding in on your second pair? That seems a little high.
Maybe they're not done though. Like, maybe they're going to package up one of their defensemen and get some help on offense, which is where they need it. Could
be. That said, I mean, are there bigger needs for this team? Yes. However, as I sit here and think, a first round pick, if a first round pick was being traded for a player like Alex Romanov at the trade deadline, and it was 1 first round pick, that would be a steal.
Yeah.
And so I think from that perspective, yes, we know that it's like a medium, right? Middle of the draft, middle of the first round pick. I think that's fair. I just think they could have used that first for something better.
The Islanders, you mean, could have?
Yeah, the Islanders could have.
Yeah, I agree. Because the Canadiens sure use it for something better.
Right. So the Canadiens then turn around and take that 13th overall pick and package it with a third. So Chicago's gotten a first, a second, and next year's third, or 2 years from now's third from Ottawa. And now they've gotten Montreal's third tonight and the Islanders first for Kirby Dach.
It's a pretty good piece of business for the Habs to turn Alex Romanov into Kirby Dach.
Alex Romanov and a third for Kirby Dach is impressive for sure.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And again, it makes the Canadiens more exciting. It makes them a better team, like on night 1 next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got those 2 coming in, right? You've got Dach, you've got Slafkovsky, and my biggest issue with them not picking Shane Wright first is that Montreal needs centers big time. Well, and they went out and used some of their capital to get that center. And so offensively, an area that they struggled, they have fixed that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and they didn't just go and take a guy in the draft who may or may not be elite. They went and got a proven NHL star who they know is going to perform in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby Dach is not as bona fide as I would like. He's not, and this is why he didn't get a second in there as well. He's not Alex DeBrincat, but he's also had a tough row. I mean, he broke his wrist, came back, and then the struggles that a lot of young players have had these last couple of years, just with COVID and everything that comes with that whole type of developing as a player. I still think he's got the talent to pull it off and to be that moving forward.
Yeah, I think so too.
So we are currently, what pick are we at in this draft, Nick?
I think pick 10 just went, and the first Russian of the draft was picked.
Well, that's a good time. Let's talk about that then. Russians at the draft, not so many of them this time, and a lot of talk this week, specifically around Ivan Fedotov and Kirill Kaprizov and some of those Russian players who've gone back, because, as you all know, probably there's war with Russia and the Ukraine. Russian has mandatory military service times, and a lot of these NHL players haven't done that, and now by needing these players to serve, Fedotov disappeared.
Yeah, like quite literally, which is pretty freaky. Now, I was under the impression that this mandatory military service for these hockey players included playing for the Russian national team, because that team is technically part of the military.
Is that true? Interesting.
Yeah. So that was my assumption, is their mandatory military service was like, no. You're not going to America to play in the NHL. You're going to stay here and play for our country. But if that's the case, like, why are you disappearing the guy?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's freaky. It's a super scary situation.
Yeah. So now we've got, a lot of Russian players leaving before they also have a similar situation, but it almost seems like we're at a place much like we saw, 2 years ago, back when we talked about, the Russian Five and kind of that Russian move over, where defections are a thing that we might have to see again for some of these Russian drafted players to come over, especially now. Maybe waiting a couple years, we'll see how things adjust and things happen. But as of right now, it does not seem like a thing where these Russian players are going to be able to come over and play right away.
No, it certainly does not, and that's why it's noteworthy that it was the Ducks actually with the 10th pick. They took Pavel Mintyukov. It's noteworthy that some of these teams are picking, that this team is picking a Russian player this high in the draft, because there's a lot of uncertainty around whether or not he'll even be able to come over and play.
Yeah, and I would say, if it is a matter of like serving the military and then you're done, then perhaps it certainly becomes a longer play for these teams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which it always kind of was drafting Russian players, I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah, for sure. All right. That is the first half of our show. We are going to, who's up next? The Columbus Blue Jackets are making their second pick of the first round. They're making their pick. So we're going to take a break here. And by Columbus Blue Jackets, I actually mean San Jose Sharks. And that is an important thing, because we're going to talk about San Jose Sharks when we come back. Three, two, one.
So while we were on break, turns out the San Jose Sharks did not need to make their pick, because they traded down, and Arizona traded up from the 27th pick tonight to the 11th, and San Jose took their first rounder at 27, which is Carolina's from the Dvorak trade, and 2 more second rounders tomorrow.
Good move by San Jose.
Yeah, not a bad piece of business for Mike Grier, who's now their general manager.
Yeah, and I want to get to that. I just realized, though, that first round pick has made the rounds, because that Carolina pick was given to Montreal in the Kotkaniemi offer sheet.
Yeah.
which then got traded for Christian Dvorak, which now has been traded again.
Why does nobody want this pick?
I don't know. I'm sure it's going to be a great player, and everyone's going to kick themselves.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, Mike Grier, new GM. I mean, big changes in San Jose this week. They removed Bob Bugner as coach and signed Mike Grier as the general manager.
It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool time in NHL history. Mike Grier is the first Black general manager in the NHL.
I mean, it's definitely due, right? It's past due that we have this.
It is way past due, for sure.
It was a big week for all kinds of front office signings, right? Lots of, some great, highly qualified people getting in who wouldn't in the past number of years, right? Now, Haley Wickenheiser, assistant general manager, officially getting the promotion up. Some other ladies getting hired on to front offices as well. And Mike Grier being the first Black GM in the league. I think it's a great time for people that previously were underrepresented to be represented now.
Man, I had not heard Mike Grier's name in so long. What's the first jersey that pops into your head when you hear his name?
Now it's San Jose, but it's definitely the Oilers beforehand.
Yeah, me too. That was the first thing that popped into my head was the Oilers. But after he retired, I guess he was an assistant coach with the Devils. And then he was a hockey ops advisor. Okay, so he's has that front. I just had no idea he was in the front office of teams. Well,
and I think that's for a lot of us, right? We kind of look at it like we do a lot of these players who come in, right? And you're like, what has player X done to warrant this move to a front office? But he's, unlike a lot of them, he has put in the time, right? Like some of them show up and you're like Steve Yzerman was not like assistant GM Steve Yzerman. He was general manager. Joe Sakic, same thing, right? These guys were hired in. Mike Grier put in the time, showed that he's deserving of it, and fully earned that new role in San Jose.
Yeah, pretty good career progression too. He started as a scout with the Blackhawks. Then he was an assistant coach with the Devils. And then he was a hockey operations advisor with the Rangers. So he's really kind of hit every kind of step that you need to within the organization to really understand how it all comes together. It's pretty cool.
And just made a fantastic trade. I mean, getting to move down 16 spots, if there's not anyone you love at 11, which clearly there wasn't, to get two pretty high, like mid upper second rounders for him. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Totally agree. I don't know. Sharks should be excited. This is a fun time for them.
Absolutely it is. So that happened this week, but your Detroit Red Wings also made a front office. Can you call that front office? Is a coach front office?
They're kind of a transition, like, dotted line, call it, to front office.
Your Detroit Red Wings signed a coach is what they did.
They did, finally. Derek Lalonde, which is not how I was saying his name before I watched interviews with him.
Sorry, can you run that back for me again? Because Lalonde
is how they've been saying it on TV, but I was always saying Lalonde.
Yeah, I would trust you to know how to say Lalonde. Okay. Well, Derek Lalonde. What can you tell us?
Former assistant coach for the San Jose Sharks, or for the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's so right. Yzerman obviously has a previous relationship and knows him. He's not the good-looking assistant coach. He's the one that looks like Dr. Evil.
Oh, well, I'm glad we've cleared that up.
That's how my wife and I classify the Tampa head coaches. There's Crying Cooper, John Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the good-looking coach, and there's Dr. Evil. And Detroit snatched up Dr. Evil.
Okay. Which is good. You've gone skill before beauty, and I think that's an important step to
take. There is no good angle of this guy.
Poor guy.
But what I will say is he seems like a very personable, player-first, open communication, focuses on the relationship kind of coach, which I think is going to be important for the Red Wings because of how young they are and the kind of attention these players are going to need.
Yes, very high needs organization. You've got a bunch of needy players on that team.
I just assume they are.
But it is
They're
important,
only 19.
Right? And a lot of players who will need to learn how to struggle with not having success. I'm not saying the Red Wings are not going to be successful this year. I actually think that they're going to probably, of the teams in the East, I think they'll probably take the biggest jump this year from what we saw last year.
Yeah, probably.
But what I know is they're not going to win the Stanley Cup this year. And unless you're the LA Kings who just like pop into the playoffs and you're like, whatever we get is gravy, I don't think the Red Wings will make the playoffs. And so it'll be that disappointment, and maybe they get close and they miss. Well, how do you bounce back from that? And I think that's where you need that kind of a coach.
Yeah. And like, look, since Yzerman's been hired, he's been very public about this is going to take time. You can't rush this process. We're just going to be bad for a while. And Lalonde didn't say that because they're obviously further along than when Steve Yzerman was hired. But he did preach patience. Like, this is a young team, and they're getting younger. It's going to take time to figure it out. But you got to keep the players positive and motivated through that. So I don't think it's a secret that they're not expected to go deep and win the Stanley Cup this year, even to the players. So it's very much a morale thing. And if he's a player first guy and he can build those great relationships and keep them on his side and keep them playing for each other every single night, the way that Tampa Bay Lightning team is built, then I think they're in good hands.
Yeah. And he has that experience coming from Tampa, right? He's been there a long time. Like you said, Steve Yzerman knew him there, so clearly knows what he's getting as a coach. And so I think a great choice for them. Boston also announced a coach this week, Jim Montgomery, returning to the coaching ranks. And I mean, coaching aside, I'm glad to see that what he needed to resolve has been resolved and he's able to come back to coaching.
Yeah, he was in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
When he stepped down.
Yeah.
Yeah, good on him. I don't know much about his coaching style, I have to admit. Dallas is not a team I watch a lot because Jamie Benn plays for them.
Understandable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
and
go ahead.
I was going to say, he's replaced Jamie Benn with Brad Marchand. So it's really just.
It's even worse.
Yeah. So I think, if he knows how to handle Jamie Benn, he can figure out how to handle Marchand.
Yeah, I think so. You're probably right about that.
So yeah.
But as a result of that, what's his name? Jake DeBrusk repealed his trade request.
Which is the trade request that just never seemed like it would actually happen.
So is it a coaching issue then? Now he's like the bad guy's out, so I'll stay?
I guess so. Yeah.
It's weird.
I don't know. And it's not like Jake DeBrusk is a fine player, but he doesn't have that much pull that we need to find a coach that Jake's going to like.
Yeah.
I would really hope that that's not the case of what happened there.
It's very strange. The Bruins are an interesting case because they're not bad, but they're not getting better. They're not improving year over year over year.
Yeah.
But they're still good enough to be in the mix.
Yeah.
For the playoffs.
Yeah. They're that team that was great. Now is getting worse as they age out and they lose some players and etc. But yeah.
So Montgomery comes in and it's just about managing a transitioning roster while, keeping our playoff dreams alive.
Exactly. Yeah. Seems doable.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. 2 more trades happened this week. One of them happened this morning, and that trade featured my Colorado Avalanche, who'd already gotten rid of this year's first round pick. This year's first is Arizona's in the Darcy Kemper trade.
Mm-hmm.
They went ahead and traded, I believe Colorado's second is also gone this year. I think that potentially was the Devon Taves trade still. I want to say that that's where that one went. And now their third round pick this year is gone, which I'm not sad about that it's gone because we can just win Stanley Cups and who cares about draft picks anymore. So now their third round pick this year is gone, getting an actual goalie for next year. So they traded this year's first for a goalie for this year, now one for next year. Alexandar Georgiev, New York Rangers backup goaltender. Now Colorado Avalanche's likely starting goalie.
Yeah, definite starting goalie, right? Like this means Kemper's gone. Have they said as much?
Essentially, yeah. Like I didn't see. I wasn't around the full media stuff today, but I would very much assume that he is not a member of the Avalanche. Yeah,
they're not going to be able to afford him. They gave up a third and a fifth round pick for this year's draft and a third round pick for next year's draft. And I have a hard time believing that the Rangers have been holding on to this guy whose name has been in the trade rumors for the last 2 years nonstop. And all they were holding out for 2/3 and a fifth.
Right.
What? This is the best you could get.
It is surprising that was the price, especially for goalies. I mean, goalies via the trade market can get you a good amount, and they went apparently quantity over quality on this one.
Very strange. I mean, good for Joe Sakic, and we know that he's notoriously good with trades. I'm a little puzzled on New York on this one, just because of how bold they've been about keeping him.
Yeah, it is a surprising move. I think maybe the fact that Shesterkin clearly took the net this year probably hurt his draft or his trade value a little bit. But I did not think it was this high. Did not think it was.
I'm just surprised. Like someone like the Maple Leafs didn't jump all over that.
For sure. Yeah. Now he is not signed. He isn't signed for next year yet. So the Avalanche are going to need to sign him. But restricted free agent, 26 years old.
He'll be signed. What are you going to say no to the Stanley Cup champions? Oh, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
Oh, exactly. You just won a Stanley Cup? Huh.
And even so, what's extra surprising about this, like whatever contract he signed, again, restricted free agent, as I said, if the Avalanche wanted to sign him, an offer sheet would have been an even easier way to go about this for the Rangers. Like the offer sheet return would have been better than this trade return.
Yeah. Very strange.
I'm not 100% sure about it, but hey, I mean, if the offer sheet return is not as good as this, I am very excited for the contract he's about to sign with the Avalanche. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, true enough.
All right.
Enough. Last trade.
Ryan McDonagh away after avoiding suspension for almost murdering Darren Helm in the clinching game of the Stanley Cup Finals. Traded by Tampa off to the Nashville Predators.
This is a big move for Tampa because he was a big part of that team. Like he's been on the scene for many years. He's been a big part of their core. He's their assistant captain, big part of their room, big part of their results on the ice. So, this is a pretty big move for a team that's won the Stanley Cup the last 2 years.
2 of the last 3 years.
2 of the last 3 years. What do you call it 2 weeks ago last year already?
It was last season.
I guess
they did not win the last
flipped.
2.
This season has flipped. Okay. 2 of the last 3 years.
Thank you.
I'm a little puzzled by what Nashville's doing here.
Well, especially so because Philippe Myers is, if you buy him out, you actually gain cap space right now. He's got one of those fun contracts where he's essentially needs to be bought out. So he's not playing for Tampa. This was not a way where he's getting money for that. So, okay. But I don't know why they would pay full price, give up an asset of value for full price Ryan McDonagh. I'm not sure.
Well, and Ryan McDonagh comes in. He is now the oldest player on this team. Is it so what? They want to bring in veteran experience on top of what someone like Roman Josi and Philip Forsberg, who's not signed yet, but Matt Duchene, like they have veteran experience on this team. Sure, they haven't won a Stanley Cup, but some of these guys have gone deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, they've got defenders.
Yeah, it's just a weird. I don't get it. I don't get this one for Nashville.
No, I think being able to find some pieces, that's great. If you have that cap space, right? They do, as you mentioned, Phil Forsberg, unrestricted. He could leave. You need to make sure, maybe this is just a way of, let's prove to him that we're committed to this team to winning now. And he's the kind of guy that you need to be able to keep, right? If they can't keep Forsberg,
yeah,
I'm not saying burn it to the ground, but maybe set fire in a couple corners and see what happens.
Yeah, but one of those corners should be the spot that Ryan McDonagh is filling.
Fair, yeah.
Right? So maybe do the Philip Forsberg thing first, and then you can go bring in Ryan McDonagh.
Yeah. And I think this is a team and organization that doesn't fully know where they are at, right? They're not good. They're not terrible. They still make the playoffs, but they get swept. And I think we saw, right, what Elliot Friedman reported, was it this season or last season, that every player in Nashville is on the trade block and no one got moved. And so I think it's a team that's really uncertain of the direction they should be taking right now, and are just kind of standing still. This McDonagh move's not a standstill, but I'm not sure how much of a step forward it is. It's
not a step forward. It's a step sideways, in my opinion.
Interestingly enough, if you had have told me that Ryan McDonagh and Roman Josi were 1 year of age apart, I would call you a liar. And that is a fact.
Why? Because of how much better Roman Josi's aged?
I guess so. It feels like Ryan McDonagh has been in the league for a long time, and Roman Josi's maybe just he got good later. I don't know.
It does feel like Ryan McDonagh's been in the league forever. Remember, he was a captain of the Rangers.
Yeah, that seems. it was literally 2 teams ago. So yes, that's a while.
It was a long time ago, and Yzerman traded for him in Tampa.
Yeah,
it was a long time ago.
It was. All right. So those are the trades of the week. Some contracts that got signed this week. 2 potentially former Pittsburgh Penguins. Both of these players played for the Penguins. Both of them won Stanley Cups with the Penguins. One of them is staying. Both of them are staying. Only one in Pittsburgh. Marc-André Fleury, 2 years, 3.5 per to stay in Minnesota after the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's fine. Great. Good for them. Good for Fleury. I have no issues with this contract. I don't think it's too much.
No. Marc-André Fleury is most certainly worth that contract.
Yeah.
And no problems with it.
It's a great move for them. He's not going to play all 82 games.
No, he needs someone else there.
Yeah.
And they have that. They still have Cam Talbot.
Yeah, it's totally fine. He'll split the net with Talbot. And then what he brings to the room, I think, is really where the other part of his value comes in.
For sure. Yeah. The second signing of the day, and there was some other big, small ones, but the other big signing of today, Kris Letang stays in Pittsburgh, 6 years, $6.1 million per year to keep 35-year-old Kris Letang in Pittsburgh until he is 41 years old.
Yeah. So we had a long drive today, and we were driving in the car, and I was driving and my wife was on Twitter and she told me about this deal. And I said a word that you'd have to bleep out on this podcast.
Did your daughter hear?
I don't know. Probably.
Oof. You know what? That's fine. She needs to learn early how she should feel about Kris Letang.
If she wants to use it about the Kris Letang contract, then I'm totally fine with it. Because what are these guys doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Why are you giving this guy, what are they giving him, 6 years? A 35-year-old? What does he need this much term for?
Here's the thing. Nobody else was signing Kris Letang to this contract. Nobody. There was no one lining up to give a 35-year-old defenseman 6 years. What is going on?
I mean, this guy has had, especially recently, he's had a ton of injury issues. Like, as soon as I heard this, the first acronym that popped into my head was LTIR.
For sure. Yeah.
When he's done this year, next year, maybe the year after that, he's gonna pull the Marion Host. He's gonna develop some sort of allergy to his equipment.
I am excited for him to not suit up in front of the 5,000 fans of the Arizona Coyotes, though, when he's a member of that team.
Yeah, right. That is what this contract screams.
I would even a 3-year, if it was 3 years, $6.1 million per, I'd question it.
Yes.
I'd be more okay with it than this.
Yeah, it actually doesn't sound so bad knowing what he actually got.
Maybe that's it, right? You're like, all right, but what if I told you it was actually double 3 years? And that's crazy. Who would ever do that? These guys are.
It's terrible. It makes no sense. They know he's never going to be around in 2027. So they're just like, whatever.
Well, and that's kind of it, right? It's not those backloaded deals that we saw before, right? That are illegally created, but it's front loaded. So they pay him his money and then he retires and goes away, which I guess that was the issue before, right? They were front loaded before as well. But yeah, because this drops off a pretty big amount. And looking at that now, like it goes from 8 to 8, 6.2, all the way down to 4.8 for the last 3, which seems less than it should be. But I guess if it's allowed, it's allowed.
It's definitely going to make it easier for the Coyotes to pay him.
Right, exactly. They can pay him 4.8 to not show up. So
yeah,
that'll be great.
Yeah. Pittsburgh is an interesting case, though, before we move on, because they got Malkin, they got to get done. They got Rickard Rakell, they got to get done.
Yeah.
I don't know. This team could be facing the cliff pretty soon.
Oh, I think they are. I think this is it. To me, this screams of not Malkin coming back. That you could not lose both of these players in the same offseason, and they needed to pony up and make something happen for Letang.
That would be bad for them.
Yes. I would rather have Malkin on a 6x6.1 than Letang.
Yes, 100%.
And he's not, I will say it here, he will not get that.
No, I don't think so either.
If someone hands up Evgeny Malkin a 6-year contract, I will stop this podcast forever.
They better do it soon.
Yeah. Could you imagine if that I mean, I've made threats before that if something happens, I'll end the show early. Could you imagine if we just ended one episode short of what we promised?
Because in 2 days, Malkin signs too long of a contract for you. You're like, I can't take this anymore.
This is unbelievable. Malkin. No. When he signs a 7-year deal with the Penguins tomorrow, know that I'm upset with it. Just know.
And you'll never hear from us again.
Exactly. What's Malkin's jersey number? Do you remember?
71, I want to say.
So yeah. So a 7x7.1.
He's too old to be making deals like that.
But
you do that when you're like 19. You don't do that now when you're 35.
But Ron Hextall's not too old to hand out those deals.
That's true. I forgot he was the GM there. That makes so much sense.
It's all coming together.
It's all coming together.
All right, that's it. That is the news of the week. We are still working our way through this draft. It's halfway through the draft. Have there been any more? We've been pretty busy talking. Any more deals happening in the last bit? I don't think so.
No, man, I keep refreshing the page, but I just keep seeing more names I don't recognize. The latest one, Rutger McGroarty.
That's not a real.
It sounds made up.
Yeah, Rutger McGroarty.
That sounds like something that I go to Google and type random name generator in, and that's what it spits out.
That's fair. Yeah, that's certainly a name. Who picked Rutger?
The Winnipeg Jets.
That sounds about right.
That's what happens when you don't have a coach. You just make up names on a sheet of paper.
And just hope that they're a real name.
Trotz would have never stood for that.
No, never. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. As mentioned, unless Evgeny Malkin does the undesirable thing, we've got 2 more episodes left. We have 1 episode coming out on July 18th. And then we'll be breaking down all of the free agent stuff because free agency is the 13th.
Yeah.
So this is coming on the 7th. Next Wednesday is the start of free agency. We'll give it a few days to fester and get it all sorted out. We'll be back on the 18th, breaking down everything that happens in those few days. So from draft night tonight, I don't think there'll be any more big news. No one's making a big splash for the 14th overall pick here. So whatever happens through free agency, contract signings, any trades that happen, we'll be here breaking that down that day. And then that's it. That's the last of Hockey Talk. And then we'll have a series finale on the 25th where we will do really whatever we want.
Yeah, that show's going to be a wild card.
I mean, who even knows? We should probably figure out what we're going to do. We might have to do some show prep.
We should talk about that. Yeah, for the first time ever, we're going to have to do show prep.
For the final episode, we'll finally put in an effort. But hey, thanks for tuning in this week. I hope that you like what your teams did at the draft tonight and tomorrow for day 2. I hope that your teams made you happy. And that's really all we can ask for at this point. This is a day of hope. Every team has hope on draft day. You either traded away your picks for hope, you picked players that bring you hope. So I hope that you enjoyed it.
That was beautiful, Carl.
Thanks. You can find us on Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast, thefourthlinepodcast.com. Great articles came out from there this week. Tribute to the Hockey Hall of Fame, which there's been so much going on. We haven't really touched on that. But Alex, Joe, and Brody wrote about the Sedins, Luongo, and Daniel Alfredsson all heading into the Hall of Fame, as well as an article today from Ben about Evander Kane, where we could see him ending up and kind of what he brings to a team. So head on over there, check those out. We'll be back not next Monday. Next Monday, we're not having a show. 18th, we'll be here breaking down free agency. And until then,
it's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. Gary Bettman loves to be booed, and apparently Ron Hextall loves to be screwed. He signs really bad contracts.